I'm Grant Flanders with K-StateOnline, and you're listening to the KSO Show. We're 11 practices through fall camp, and we visited with Van Malone in the Veneer Family Football Complex. He discussed a lot of things, the assistant head coach of the football program. And one of the first things I do want to mention, 11 practices through, linebackers happen to be leading the team in interceptions. That's an interesting note because that means they might be doing better than some of us may expect. But that also could, change throughout fall camp. We only have a few more weeks left of fall camp till we get into the season. So it is kind of impressive to see the linebackers leading in a category you wouldn't quite expect. Moving on, he also mentioned Daniel Green as someone who he has seen grown, and he's been glad to see the improvements that he has made in that area. So the next thing to talk about is the wide receivers. I had to ask the question, what's a wide receiver that your cornerbacks have not had an easy time guarding? First guy he mentioned, he wanted to go with the young guys first, Garcia. He's been talked about a lot, it seems like, within the last few days, which is a good sign for a young guy, but it's also not surprising as he was an exciting high school player. He has speed, but don't expect him to make waves this season, but it does sound like he could be a very serious future playmaker for this team. He also talked about Malik Knowles and Tyrone Howell as, the stalwarts at that position. He says, reiterates what Kleiman has said about Howell in that he has really strong hands, really knows how to catch the football. And then Malik Knowles, he just said, is getting better every day, it seems like. So we'll see how that comes to fruition when the season arises. They will need those wide receivers to be really good. Another point that he talked about, of course, is the defensive backfield. He talks about that a lot, and I think that's something I can touch on for a little bit here because there's three players, maybe even more, that I want to talk about. But first, the young guys, because he mentioned them right off the bat. Morris Brown is a guy that's going to see a lot of time at nickel. We've already known that going into it. And Van Malone made it sound like, he's capable in many positions, though, not just the nickel. He could play various positions. He did play safety last year when he was forced into that position roughly, but it sounds like he's come along to where he can, maybe be more versatile in the defensive backfield, which is a very bright sign, especially at the nickel spot where they need really good production. So T. Denson, another guy that I had to ask about because, that's the cornerback spot, a young guy who we've heard good things about, from sources and I feel like from coaches as well, that this kid might be able to play this year and be someone that steps in. And Van Malone talked extensively about, the progress that he has made. Probably not a guy that will crack into that lineup much unless injury happens, but then again also it's a defensive backfield where a lot of rotating bodies can happen, so expect T. Denson to maybe see the field a little more than you thought he may have. Let's see who else we got here. TJ Smith is the other young guy he mentioned. Of course, he calls him, I guess, the Wasp because he's always stinging people, which is great. That was one of Van Malone's great lines of the day. Because TJ Smith does that. That's why he's such a good safety. He can hit hard, runs downhill, and it sounds like post-injury, he's still doing what he don't do in pre-injury, which is really good signs. I do want to talk about a couple more. I want to talk about the transfers as well in the defensive backfield because he did mention those as well. Sincere Mason, Reggie Stubblefield, two guys we don't know a lot about because they came in later. They're doing well. They are Van Malone just kept talking about how they played a lot of football. They know what they're doing in the defensive backfield, and he likes what they have in those guys as depth pieces and possibly in starting roles, especially for a guy like Julius Brents and Russ East, who he also mentioned. But we know a little more about those guys since they came all the way back during spring ball. So I think that about wraps us up. I'm sure I've been rambling on and on, so I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. Van Malone said a lot. Check out our YouTube channel. You can watch the whole Van Malone video there. You can see Derek Young's face, Drew Galloway's face, Colin Settle. He's got great production on some of our videos up there. And so please subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to K-StateOnline, and don't forget to tell your friends.